Hello, how are you doing? I am Áine Homer, the Baby Reflux Lady, and thank you for joining me about this really important question, which is my premature baby more likely to have reflux? Now, this question equally applies to babies who are young and tube fed, because babies who are premature have an extremely high rate of tube feeding. Now, I've got notes today because there's quite a few things I want to get through, and at the same time, I want to try and keep this video relatively short so I get information over to you. If you do have comments, please put them onto the Facebook stream, pop them into the YouTube feed, pop them into the Instagram feed, and I will do my very best, as long as they're relevant to prematurity and reflux, to answer those questions. So first of all, the first thing to understand is, how is a premature baby different from a baby who's born at full term? And of course, there is the most incredible spectrum of prematurity. We go from, 23 or 24 weeks, from the absolute smallest, teeny things, to anything born before the gestational age of 37 weeks is classified as premature. And there is a huge amount of development that happens in utero during this major, mostly the third trimester, that impacts how we should support babies when they're outside versus when they're inside. Two major things. First of all, a baby who is born premature has a less developed body in terms of everything than they would do than if they were born at term. Let me know. Does that little one just make sense? Give me a yes. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a heart. Give me a something that says, yeah, they're not going to be as developed. If a baby was born at 6-week gestation, we would see that they are still fish-like. They look embryonic. They don't really look like a human child. So this is the thing. When we, thank you, Sarah, when we see and start observing this, that babies who are born at 24 and 23 weeks, those micro preemies, they're human. They look human. They are phenomenally incredible beings. Yet their entire body on the inside is not as mature as it otherwise would be. Most importantly, when it comes to digestion, their digestive system is not as mature as it otherwise would be. They do not have virtually any digestive enzymes at this stage. Their body is not actively in that stage of producing digestive enzymes. For example, the production of one of the digestive enzymes, enterokinase, which is a precursor to protein digestion, that the production of that only starts between the ages of 32 and 40 weeks gestation. So babies who are micropreemies don't even have this. Sorry, it's not an enterokinase. It is. Sorry, I'm trying to mix up. There's so many digestive enzymes. It is a precursor for protein digestion in the small intestine. The other really important factor, which is why micropreemies and premature babies look so small and so skinny, and sometimes people might describe them as scrawny, like they don't have meat on them essentially, is because the main protein deposition, the transfer of protein from mum to baby in utero, happens mostly during the third trimester, this protein deposition, okay? Baby has the bones, they have the skin, they have the structural things are there, but the protein, the muscles, that deposition really happens in the third trimester. Which is why in many countries across the world, and it's not for everybody everywhere, but in many countries across the world, excuse me, there is almost a blanket application of fortified milk. Even if mom is breastfeeding, it's generally accepted that baby needs additional protein fortification. That is because of this lack of protein deposition happening from mum to baby. There are many schools of thought. However, in general, it is always good to make sure baby has additional amino acids in this third trimester. That's general. Case by case, it can be different. And I do know parents, and I've worked with parents of micropreemies who have simply breastfed during this period, and baby has developed and grown absolutely perfectly. The general rule of thumb, though, is additional supplementation, fortification with a high amino acid milk. So going back, the other thing, that's how premature babies are different to babies born at term. Now, a lot of babies who are premature also end up being fed via a tube. There are some assumptions sometimes made that baby's not able to coordinate a suck-swallow pattern. If a baby's not able to coordinate a suck-swallow pattern at the age of 24 weeks gestation, then we need to be looking at their tongue function. Okay. If you know anything about me, if you've read any of my page, if you've seen anything anywhere, you'll know that I'm passionate about oral function, specifically that of the tongue. Tongue tie as one element of oral function is so poorly overlooked. And especially in babies who are premature, babies, the tongue actually separates from and is distinguishable from about 6 weeks gestation. And from that stage, baby starts to learn how to use their tongue, how to move it, how to suckle with it. So long before 24 weeks, for the absolute micropreemies are born, they have this tongue function. I've worked with babies who are tube fed, where parents have been told that because the baby is unable to swallow properly, that baby has suffered some sort of, they've been told baby has suffered some sort of brain injury at birth, and therefore has been damaged and can't function and can't swallow properly. And the truth is, this baby was actually just tongue-tied. And it's not the only one. There are so many cases where baby needs to be tube fed. We need to be looking at oral function first and foremost. The biggest challenge we have is that our hospitals, the pediatricians, the obstetricians, the midwives, the majority of the people who work in the hospital environment and in the NICU are not trained to look at tongue function. And they haven't been trained to look at tongue function. It's like the entire world has forgotten about the tongue. And I will go into the tongue in a lot more detail over the coming weeks, but that, like, I could speak about for hours on tongue function alone. But if a baby's looking to be tube fed, we need to be looking at oral function first and foremost. When the fortification from milk comes in, as I said already, that is rather important to make sure baby has the correct amino acids. However, we need to be understanding whether the ingredients in that milk and that fortifier are actually digestible by baby. A lot of these milks come with the proteins, but instead of being boosted by fats for growth and development and calories, they're boosted with carbohydrates. The problem with carbohydrates, baby doesn't have any salivary amylase until their birth age of 3 months, minimal. They don't produce pancreatic amylase till about 6 months. So they're at a deficiency of being able to break down carbohydrates in the first place. Okay, this all has an impact. Therefore, we see a lot of babies who are premature, who are on fortified milks, or even in things like infantrini, where we've got a high carbohydrate load. They struggle with constipation. They struggle with bloating. They struggle with trapped gas, with wind, with flatulence. This is because they're drinking milks that their body simply cannot break down effectively. There are always ways to look at what any particular child is having and what suits them. And I will say this is not a blanket case for all babies. This is the majority of what I've experienced and witnessed over the last 4 or 5 years. When we start looking at things individually and specifically for any one child, that's when we start to get really good answers. You know, there's going to be some of you here who have an avocado allergy, but I don't have an avocado allergy even. I do have avocados, loads of them. And therefore, if you came to my house for lunch, I might serve a really super healthy lunch. But if I was serving that lunch to somebody who had an anaphylactic level reaction, shock reaction level, even to avocados, that's a life-threatening meal. So we need to step back and start saying, we're individuals, we're unique. Every single one of us is different from the next. We all process carbohydrates differently. We all process avocados differently. We all process our food differently. We chew differently. We sit differently. We do everything differently. And therefore, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Let me know, is this making sense? The ability of a child to feed who is premature, they need support. And so we need to make sure we're providing appropriate support. I'm pretty sure I've done a session somewhere on tube-fed babies because, by the way, reflux does not go hand in hand with a baby who's tube-fed. It does in real life, but it doesn't have to, is the point I'm trying to make. Babies who are premature are more likely to have reflux simply because they are under their body isn't as developed as it would be when they're born. And some of the supplementations and some of the ways that we look at supporting them are not looking at the underlying cause of what's going on for them. The other challenge we have is when we're looking at babies who are tube fed is the cleanliness of the tubes, because they introduce even more bacteria to a baby who hasn't had exposure to bacteria to learn and to teach their immune system outside, for example, in the real world, because in the NICU, it's quite a clean environment and we want it to be clean. However, we want to understand the impact of all these things. So my point is, and I'm trying to keep this short, we're just going over 10 minutes. Let me know, are there any questions around prematurity? Any questions around this that you've got? I'll hang on for a moment or two. But yes, babies who are premature are more likely to have reflux. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't a phenomenal amount we can do when we start understanding why they have reflux, what is the cause of their reflux, how we support them. Even birth trauma, my goodness, the trauma that goes with prematurity from a parent's perspective is one thing. The trauma that gets introduced to a baby as well, if they're born in a we must save your life environment. This is brilliant. Like, modern medicine is incredible how we can save lives, how we can support babies, especially micropreemies. We also need to be taking care of these children. We need to be taking care of their emotions, of their hormones and their endocrine system. All of these play a part. And if these babies are breastfed, mum and her endocrine system have a massive impact and positive role to play in supporting baby as well. There's so much that we can do when we start to understand it individually. There is a question that says 36 weeks and premature, but still likely to have reflux. It's like marginally by the time baby is 36 weeks. I go by the 37 weeks as being term because that's the general medical literature. At 36 weeks, your baby is less developed than they would be at 40 weeks gestation. This is the natural progress of life. However, they might be marginally more inclined to, marginally more at risk of suffering with reflux. However, it doesn't mean that we can't figure it out and do something to support them. So hopefully that answers that question. I haven't seen any other questions. I'm going to be back here on Friday. I can't remember what topic I'm going to be talking about on Friday, but I will be here. If there's any other questions, I will hang on for a moment. By the way, please share these videos. I'm trying to create a body of work and evidence to get out in the world, answering popular questions that are plugged into, I was going to say Google, I'll say Google, Yahoo, all the search engines, to answer your questions, to see what is going on and see if I can. Now, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Oh, I do. Hang on. I saw it there. Fridays, we're going to be talking about, does baby reflux cause hiccups? That's another one for Friday. So 2:30 back in the same place. But we will have another one. So we've got 35 weeks premature, suspected to have a dairy intolerance. Is this because of prematurity? He also has been told he has silent reflux. So silent reflux is because the regurgitation is coming into the esophagus, not as far as the mouth. Otherwise, other than that, we look at it completely the same way, looking at all 80 plus symptoms and issues for these children that are going on. Dairy intolerance is not necessarily related to age. Okay, dairy intolerance is what's described as a transient allergy. It comes and it will go. It will go as soon as baby's body develops. However, they don't develop the ability to digest all of the complex carbs, and I'm talking about milk, sugars, and things like that, until they're about 2. Okay, because dairy milk is a very different beast from human milk. It's also very different from goat milk and from sheep's milk. While they're all called milk, they're essentially completely different foods, and we kind of need to bear that in mind. But Cora, I will say, if you look at our symptoms tracker, and when we go through the reflux-free baby workshop, that's where we start to break out the different types of symptoms that point towards allergies, that points towards intolerance, that point towards feeding issues, that point towards issues at birth of the endocrine system, and look at how we figure them out from this big picture puzzle that your baby's presenting. It's a game of Sherlock Holmes, really. What's going on for any child? What's the clues we've been given? What can we do about them? And when we do that, we get much greater answers and stuff as well. And I have another question. So your son was 35 weeks, now 2.5. with reflux? Should he have grown out of it? Well, if you go back and you watch, I think my video from Monday is we don't need to wait for babies to grow out of it. By 2.5, reflux, if they're going to grow out of it, should be gone. We really need to know what has been going on. This is a long story to unpick. There's 2.5 years of reflux struggles going on. You know, is there medication in there that has been complicating things? Is there digestive maturity issues? Has baby been eating foods that have been hampering the digestive system rather than supporting it? It could be that there's oral aversions going on and oral issues that should have been resolved a long time ago. The baby might really need to learn how to use their mouth and their tongue and all these things. So what I will say is that it's not a, there you go, that's the answer. With over 30 different underlying causes and contributory factors to reflux, it's so important that we get the right answer. Sarah, I could tell you to go and do this and go and do that and go and do the other. The truth is, I don't subscribe to that process of let's guess, because I could be guessing for the next 3 or 4 months. Or I can sit down with you and I can figure this out and we can go, right, half an hour. We know what's going on. We know the patterns. We know the history. We've figured it all out. And because of that, we know exactly what to do to get things changing over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Sarah, if he is struggling, if at 2.5, he's still struggling, especially with sleep, if things got worse with sleep, worse with solids, especially sleep getting worse with solids, then I have a webinar that will show you and explain the digestive maturity thing. And we have a solids workshop, which is all about changing the foods your baby is eating so that we're going back to foods that really support their immature digestive system and work with it as they mature. Now, at 2.5, we may need to go back further than you might ordinarily like to. But what we do is we get to a really good baseline quickly and then resolve it. However, what I will say is the reflux is not caused directly by your baby being immature. That's not why they have it still going on now. It's something that was there at 35 weeks. It probably still would have been there at 40 weeks. So it's not because he was premature that he has reflux. So hopefully that makes sense. There was one other question, which is 3 months old now and has moved from milk spit-ups to curdled milk spit-ups while crying. Don't have that. So I'm not answering lots of questions. Caitlin, I'm doing the stream on prematurity. We do have an open Q&A session coming up. If you get into the free Facebook group, you'll be able to see the dates for that. We share the dates on Instagram as well. But when we're looking at congestion and teething, we need to go through everything in detail. What I will say is for any baby who hasn't yet started on solids, the Reflux Free Baby workshop, part of the Reflux Free Baby series, is the place to start. It is where we walk through helping you capture all of your baby's symptoms, behaviors, and signs that might be related to reflux. Then we walk through how do we put these together to see what pattern is going on. What does that pattern tell us about the underlying cause? And when we understand the underlying cause, what's the specific action that you can take to help them get reflux free really quickly? Okay, that is me for today. I will be back. We're building this channel, this body of work, of information, of answers to questions. And if you do want to get notifications of when I'm going live, please come and join our Telegram channel, https:// whatever you do there. But instead of the www, we just go t.me/Baby Reflux Lady. You'll get notifications in there. This is a new channel that we're trying to communicate with our audience, let you know, because we have got 52 plus questions lined up, 52 plus more questions lined up that we're going to be answering over the coming weeks and months for you. All right, my lovelies, this has been wonderful again, and I shall see you soon. I don't want that on the screen. Please share it, by the way. Please feel free to share these broadcasts.